What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. I'm especially excited today to talk about Nintendo. Not just Nintendo in general, but specifically my favorite Nintendo consoles of all time. My first console ever was the original NES. I was super young and it was several years old by the time I got one. I think the SNES was already out even, but we'll get into that a bit later. Ultimately, I have owned every Nintendo system aside from the Virtual Boy, and over the years, I've built some truly remarkable memories with these consoles. So I wanted to narrow it down and give my top 5 Nintendo consoles of all time, so let's get right into it. At the number 5 spot, we've got the NES, the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Now this is the OG. The NES is almost entirely responsible for introducing video games to the masses when it was released. It's most iconic for creating the video game franchises that we all know and love today, Mario and Zelda. They started here, and for that alone, it deserves some serious recognition. The NES is also what got me into gaming, and the first game I ever really got into was the original Super Mario Brothers. I played it over and over and over, and yeah, you get the point. I only had 2 games back then, Mario and some obscure baseball game. I've actually been trying to go back and look for whatever baseball game I had back then, but I just can't find it, nor can I remember which one it was. I wasn't huge into baseball, so it was all Mario all the time. I'd find all the hidden stuff and try to beat it faster and faster. I could feel my skill level increasing the more I played it, and as a kid, it taught me the concept of practice makes perfect. As I got more into the NES, I got more games. Super Mario Bros. 3 still holds up as one of my favorite all time. Punch-Out!, The Legend of Zelda, and also for some reason I remember playing a ton of Batman the video game. I don't know. I really liked Batman when I was younger. Still like it today if we're being honest. So could have been really bad, but I still would have loved it. The original NES will always hold a spot on the list for the sole fact that it created my love for gaming. And for that, I will always have love for the original NES. At number 4, I've got the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance felt truly incredible and felt almost surreal when it was released. A Super Nintendo in my pocket, what could be better? Oh, it has some of the best handheld experiences ever created? Yeah, all that is here, and I find this to be my favorite retro handheld to own to this day. I love playing the Game Boy Advance, and I always have. So what makes it such a great handheld experience? I think the jump from Game Boy to Game Boy Advance felt quite significant, at least it did for me. The form factor was much more comfortable and easier to take on the go, in my opinion, especially when they released the SP, but the games are really what makes any console stand out, and GBA really had some bangers. Mega Man Zero, the Castlevania games, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, Metroid Fusion, Minish Cap, man, I could go on and on. Luckily, with the Switch's online service, we can revisit these, and I'm remembering today just how amazing the library truly was there. The SP upgrade with the backlit screen and foldable form factor made this such a perfect handheld experience for its time, and truly began Nintendo's stranglehold on the handheld gaming market that they honestly still hold to this day. So if you never owned a Game Boy Advance, or you're just starting to get into some of the older Nintendo consoles, jump on the Switch online service, get into some of those GBA games and take a look. There are some true masterpieces there. Next up at number 3, I've got the Nintendo 64. Nintendo loves experimenting with controllers, and sometimes it really pays off. Nintendo 64 may go down forever as one of the most interesting controller designs we've ever seen. Some people hate it, but I actually really like it, and the way the first party Nintendo games utilized it really worked and made for a seamless experience. But the controller is not why the console is on this list. Zelda is why the N64 is on this list. Zelda is up there with one of my favorite video game franchises ever. 2 of my favorite Nintendo games are Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, both on the Nintendo 64. The way these games reinvented Zelda and introduced us to the 3D Zeldas that we all know and love today were so memorable. The late nights with these games were incredible. Some of the greatest dungeons and puzzles are here, and replaying them is still so fun to this day. The Nintendo 64 is also responsible for giving us the original Super Smash Bros. This is my favorite fighting game growing up, and this is what got me into competitive gaming as a kid. I loved going to Smash tournaments, and there's just a ton of fun to be had on the Nintendo 64, and that's why it's on this list. Moving on to the number 2 spot, I've got the GameCube, the Nintendo GameCube. Oh, how I love this one. It's so perfect in so many ways. Everything from the controller to the startup screen. The GameCube is one of Nintendo's best, and without a doubt deserves a spot on any list. The controller is probably the best controller ever made. The small discs that they used were definitely unique, nothing special, but interesting nonetheless. The cube shape, the handle is just so Nintendo. But most of all, that startup screen. I will forever be able to recognize that startup screen. The Nintendo GameCube is so amazing, but in terms of sales, it didn't really hit with the masses like some of Nintendo's other consoles. I have to talk about the games though, because I spent so much time playing the Nintendo GameCube, and the games really made this thing incredible. First, my favorite game on the GameCube is without a doubt Wind Waker. There was a lot of hate for the art style of this one because fans were really itching for a more mature and realistic Zelda game at the time, and this went in the complete opposite direction, but I loved it for that. Again, the cel-shaded art style will always win in my book, and the lightheartedness of Wind Waker makes for a truly memorable experience, and it really holds up to this day. Crossing my fingers for the remaster from the Wii U to come to Switch, or the next Switch. I think we're kind of under the expectation that a lot of the games that haven't made it over to the Switch yet will be making it over to the next console. We also can't forget about games like Mario Sunshine, Melee, Resident Evil 4, the original Pikmin, and many, many more. This system had some real bangers, and it's a shame it didn't get more attention at release, although the appreciation has certainly improved with time, and rightfully so. Alright, at the top spot, the number one, I've got the Nintendo Switch. Finally, my favorite Nintendo console, and it's quite obviously has to be the Switch. This concept of a hybrid console has been my dream for many generations, and I never thought it would happen. I love handheld gaming so much and always have, but hated the separation of handheld versus console games. I just always liked the idea of just being able to take the saves and the games that I was working so hard to complete being paused and having to play something completely different on the go. I would always want to take those experiences with me. Not to say that handheld games always seemed inferior, they were just completely different experiences catered to the handheld environment. This was all resolved by the Nintendo Switch. The first time playing Breath of the Wild on a plane or a train was an unforgettable memory. With all the new things like Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, it's easy to forget what it was like before the Nintendo Switch. But as Nintendo typically does with its more successful consoles, it set a trend and created a new way to play games that many companies followed, and this will likely continue for years and years to come as technology improves. Aside from the concepts though, the Switch has one of the all-time best gaming libraries. I mean, just recently we had Tears of the Kingdom. At launch, they had Breath of the Wild. They're two of the best Zelda games ever made. Not to forget, we had Mario Odyssey, which is my favorite 3D Mario, the endless list of JRPGs, Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the Splatoon series, and for sure, Xenoblade Trilogy. I could go on and on. The list is endless. I also really like what they are doing with Switch Online and leveraging the classic catalog of games they have and even adding improvements to them. It's really just an exceptional run for Nintendo here with the Switch, and the sales do reflect that. Anyway, that's my list. I can't wait to see what Nintendo has in store for us with the next Switch console. If there are consoles that you have in your top 5 but they're not on this list, definitely leave them in the comments below. And until next time, I'm out.